I think that's a fantastic question because it is a continuation from my the security by design actually. Whenever there is a requirement for a new solutions, what I do is normally I will not only involve the technical people there. I will always involve the governance team, also the compliance team, the right available policies, whatever the company is following, where how the product can get the value addition, or it will be adjacent to the company values rather. So a discussion together with this compliance team as well as the tech team will give us an idea how a security can be built along with the development of the system of the project, where it will value the company values otherwise, and protect the company from the fraudulence. Actually, that is what I do. Like, because most of the cases, like not only here, I think I would take it as a ballpoint figure, like 99% of the companies products, whenever they release, only the compliance team knows that this has been released, otherwise they don't know about it. So if it is an in-house development, definitely that this has to be involved, the compliance team has to be involved. There should be a risk framework has to be developed. What is the data collecting on that? When Vijay sir was having his session, he mentioned about the personal identifiable information. What all personal identifiable information is collecting on the system? This has to be there. And he also asked a question like whether you guys know about the DPDPA Act. Normally, what I would say that a tech guy won't know about acts. They only know about codes. So this will be known by the risk person or compliance person, who will be the right person to get involved in the development process and the building process itself. So I, like in my previous experience with the MNC in UAE, we always do that. There will be the first kickoff meeting will be the all stakeholders, not only the developers or the tech team, whoever is requesting for that product. It is not like that. It will be everybody's view what we are going to do on that. So whenever I am initiating it,
can I add one more question to it? So when you look at, do you do this posture assessment? Do you do
Yes.
that continuously, or do it periodically, or when there's a demand for audit?
No. It has to be a continuous process. The security audit has to be a continuous process in I would say in every intervals. If it can be a quarterly, like monthly can be too hectic. So if it is a quarterly, it will be very good. Minimum it has to be a twice in a year. Like when you see in, I'm not blaming anybody, but let's see, take your own organization. Let's see that the RBAC policies. Now they have implemented the policies, whatever they have, who has access to what. What was the timeline last it has been audited? I'm sure that it will be more than 6 months. And there could have been a lot of people who have been left in the organization, moved to a different position, moved to a different branch. This all happens. Like in my professional career also, this has been experienced. So it has to be mandatory that at least to have an internal audit checks of your accessibilities, policies, user access, what they can access, why they want to access. Basically, I come back to the same topic. The first thing of every system or every organization has to be the classification of their assets. So when you have the classification of the assets, you will know what, where, how, who. I think that will answer that question.
Perfect. In fact, I was also thinking when you were asking me about my organization, I was feeling a bit scared. I'm going to say about it, stage because on that പിന്നെ ലോട്ടറി സ്കാം പോലത്തെ സിറ്റുവേഷൻസ് 10 വർഷം മുമ്പ് നടന്ന് ഇപ്പോഴും കമ്പനി നടക്കുന്നുണ്ടെന്ന് ഓർത്ത് വരും. So we need to prevent that. Now moving to Vijay, and Vijay, you have only so much time. Right? See, throughout application and the cybersecurity space, many frameworks have come, maybe many have become embedded. But do we need to have a look at how to change that whole framework paradigm to be ready to tackle the new world? Or are the frameworks too legacy now?
Frameworks are there for a reason. frameworks are never the only scaffolding on which you build. It is a scaffolding which allows you to set what are my boundaries, what are the things to be checked, what are the things composites which have to be added. The framework is always evolving. It has to keep evolving. Okay. When I started building in, say, the early days of web, okay, with the Microsoft, what is it, MVC architecture, then the MVC2, then to the latest architectures, I have frameworks which are evolving. Whether it is for development, whether it is for GRC, as Jayan said, okay, for data protection, okay, for compliance. So all sorts of the frameworks which are there. It's not just the development or the cybersecurity framework. All these frameworks have to keep growing as the environment evolves and the technology evolves. So today we are talking about more and more about AI, whether GenAI or post-GenAI, agentic. So this brings lot more requirements, lot more specifications which have to be met. Whether it is, as we talked about the kind of data which goes in, the kind of biases which can come in, the kind of poisoning of models which can happen. Okay, so all that means that there has to be those criteria. Okay. Now, one of the things we didn't talk about is what about the environmental cost? Okay, we think about ChatGPT being a very quick and efficient matter, but do you know that who is funding the biggest number of nuclear reactors in the world? It is Google and Microsoft and Amazon. They have placed, I think, about 20,000 reactors for generating power to run data centers which can run this kind of AI. So the power load itself for this kind of AI is a big, massive investment, and that is another thing you have to keep in the back of your mind when you build your framework. So your framework, you cannot say that I have these governance framework, I have my development framework, I use what do you call OWASP model for my web security, I use the latest OWASP has a model for LLMs also, by the way. Okay, so I cannot say that those will be my framework. My framework needs to keep evolving because, again, my data is, I have DPDP for India. For when I deal with Europe, I have GDPR. When I deal with US has 50 different jurisdictions. Okay, so every state is a different jurisdiction. For California, I have something else. For DC, it will be something else. So this means that those sort of things also come into play, because I am not looking today at a market which is India alone. Even if I make a product which is only for Malayalis, okay, my website deals only with for Malayali. Say I want to make a Kerala matrimony, but I will have people who are nurses in Germany, doctors in US, so their data becomes subject to that residency. So the rules, regulatory frameworks are also different. So what that means is that my framework has to incorporate features from those frameworks also. So it is never going to be static, it has to evolve.
Thank you, Vijay. So one thing which I was telling someone when we were having lunch, if there's any major tragedy that's happening in the world, right, whether it's a Pahalgam, whether it's an airline crash, there is a Malayali family impacted. And I'm not saying that as a joke, it's actually the truth. We are everywhere. So we are, you can take it whichever way you want, but Whatever happens anywhere in the world, it matters to us because it will come back and impact us. So I want to go to Victor now. I'm noticing one thing. There's only one person with a notepad and pen in this whole room. The reason I say that is, my dad was in the Air Force, and from childhood days, if he's going to talk to me, he wants me to have a notepad and pen. അങ്ങനെ അടി കിട്ടി വളർന്ന് അപ്പം അതൊരു സ്വഭാവമായിരുന്നു. ഇൻഫാക്റ്റ് അന്ന് അത് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ട് കുറേ കാര്യത്തിൽ എന്താ പറയുന്നത് സാക്ഷരനാകാൻ സാധിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. അതൊരു നല്ല ഹാബിറ്റാണ്. ബട്ട് ഐ സീ ദാറ്റ് ദ ന്യൂ ജെൻ ഈസ് പ്രോബ്ലി ഓൺ ദ ഫോൺ സേവിംഗ് ദിസ് in their RAM somewhere else. But that's a really good habit to emulate. It helps you focus many things. Right now, you're so distracted with so many things, you won't even think before sending the OTP to someone or whatever else, or clicking on a link you shouldn't click. But this is a very good habit. So coming back to you, because you're now dealing with strategy. Now, how do you approach security strategy? How do you strategically plan for these kind of things? How do you advise organizations? How do you approach this, especially when you're dealing with applications, which is going to be more in the AI space as well?
Yeah, I think that's a very appropriate question, especially for me. So when we talk about strategy, let's say even if it is at the organization level, I think strategy doesn't go with just a couple of senior leadership teams or a certain recognized individuals or stakeholders. I think the strategy should be a common objective for every individual of that organization. And that is where we will achieve what we have defined in our objectives. Now, when we are talking about generative AI, and then we are talking about the governance, and thereafter the strategy based on these governance that we are going to define. I think the first and the foremost is to have that foundational policies that has to be drafted. Now, when we say foundational policies or the governance that is drafted, that has to talk not as rigid rules or regulations or instructions, because one of the misconceptions that we have when we talk about governance is a slowdown, right? Or when you say about governance, then they think about, okay, this huge amount of bureaucracy, there's this slowdown, and then you have agile, which is fast. Now you need to marry both and take them together as one body, right? So now how would you want to do that? So you need to bring in principles like, probably my answer would be similar to what I said earlier, like principles such as transparency, confidence, trust. We can talk about zero trust out there, and we can talk about explainability as well. Now I would like to give a small example. So this could be the first step as part of a strategy to define what the governance is going to be and what our policies are going to be. Maybe I'll go with the example at the end. The second one, we need to go as a tier-based. We need, both the panelists, my fellow panelists, they mention about data classification and defining and having a risk framework. You need to define it on a tier-based, based after your policy that is drafted. That is, you can't go around and implement the same guidelines or restrictions on every chatbot or every automated tool or solutions that you have. You need to identify, like for example, if it is a chatbot that does your email, which may not have confidential data, just improvises your email content or the body, then it should have a relevant risk category. It should be defined as a particular risk category. Let's say you have 5x5 risk matrix, right? So you can start from your critical to low. Then, for example, if you have generative AI based tools or solutions, let's say that is dealing with hiring practices, or for HR, for legal, or health sector, or financial in a particular organization, those need to be considered as critical, right? So you need to classify for your risk framework, you need to classify what are those solutions, what are those generative AI's tools that you need to categorize them into different, based on different risks. And it has to be very pragmatic, like in the sense that people who are responsible to do so, to define all these categories, should do it in a proper formula base, that is your likelihood into impact. The likelihood for the email is completely different to the likelihood that you have for a, let's say for a very critical one as for legal or HR generative AI tools, right? So, and what are the impacts? They are also equally different. That's not going to be same at any point in time. So this has to be understood by the responsible stakeholders when they define this. And the third one and the fourth one that is almost the same, that is one, you need to have a very dedicated AI board members or AI council or working group who have to be not just from the tech, but also from, I think one of the panelists mentioned that it should be legal, it should be HR, it should be the senior leadership representative. Now, one of the most important things when we see on the ground is that some of the stakeholders, they work in silos. They are rigid within themselves by nature. They don't want to work, as a kind of like any, unified working group or so, right? So that has to be broken. And you need to work with a common objective as one team. That itself will help us. And then the third one is, once again, your AI governance should start from day one. That is embedded within your design phase, but it doesn't stop there, because what we need to have is a cadence-based monitoring, cadence-based review, and your audits. So you need to, that is a continuous process that doesn't stop anywhere. And the example that I wanted to share is, let's consider a health sector where they have implemented AI solution or an AI tool that gathers the day-to-day reports of a particular patient, and it drafts the discharge summary. And let's say the generative AI drafted and said the patient is advised to take XYZ tablet for 3 days, whatever it is, right? Now the doctor realized that he has not said it. He has literally not advised that particular tablet. So that's the problem that comes with your governance, that comes with your risk factor, that comes with your initial day one where you have not embedded your governance, right? So this is very critical into your strategy. Just imagine if you have a well-defined governance and everything, the design of the AI tool, generative AI tool, has gone through a process. Now that's an example for explainability in generative AI, right? Now what it will do is, the duty nurse on so and so date, mention in the notes, whatever the advice, the medical advice is. The doctor at so and so time, so there is a timestamp, right? So it is from relevant sources, right? So there is a trust factor, right? So and so time, the doctor or the surgeon advise so and so medicine. So when you have the output, that is the answer or a discharge summary, it has got the timestamp, it is taken from the relevant source. So that builds the trust, that builds that robust thing into this technology. So when we are talking about governance, and strategy, we need to keep in mind that we need to embrace the technology rather than create this fear-mongering thing. Now I'll tell you one last example and conclude that. Long time back in the Navy, I think somewhere in 2009 and 2008, as I remember as a young officer, Facebook was completely not allowed. Your mobile is 100% confiscated if they sense that it has got Facebook or any social media. And thereafter it came as Instagram and various other things. My own hands, I've been part of the same team that sat down to draft the policy of not using mobile phones on board ships, battleships and frontline ships. And today, the Indian Navy has got its own account in Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatnot. Now, the point that I want you to understand is, you need to embrace the technology, all right? So the Navy has gone on a positive side. It has embraced the technology, but how did it do it? It went strategic. It utilized the best controls, the best risk frameworks. So that is how we need to see, rather than be influenced by the fear-mongering that is available right in every click in all the devices that we have. We need to embrace generative AI, but ensure that there is right controls, right practice, and appropriate governance.
Thanks, Victor. That was very exhaustive. Appreciate it.